Hi there, booktube. Welcome to Reading Fabricator. I'm Russell, and today we're going to talk about a novella, a 100-page book, which I thought I could read in one day, but it got stretched over to two. It is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Now, I actually read this about 5 years ago, and at the time I thought it was overrated. I mean, I liked it, but I thought it was overrated. I didn't really get it. And that's because I chalked it down to my inexperience as a reader. I mean, this was back in early 2017, so I had not read that many books. I only read Heart of Darkness because I was a big fan of Apocalypse Now, and because so many lists out there rank it as one of the greatest books of its type of all time. So now, 5 years later, I reread this, having become a bit more experienced and a bit more otherworldly when it comes to literature. And I have to say, I actually like it more now. I think I get it. There are still things that I'm pondering over. I mean, I only just finished this book yesterday. But it's one of those ones where it's a small book with big ideas. There's so much to take in, so much to pontificate on, just the themes that are going on in this book. Very heavy stuff, particularly when it comes to things like slavery, which this talks a little bit black and white about, if that's the nicest way of putting it. Nonetheless, in the end, I really liked it. And for the few people out there who have been living under a rock and know absolutely nothing about this book, it's sort of like a story within a story. So it opens with 5 people aboard a yacht on the River Thames in England, I think it is. And one of them, Milo, just starts to tell they're all in sort of a state of lethargic being. They're sort of almost like a meditative state. And suddenly, Marlowe starts recounting a tale from a younger point in his life. He calls it the Pinnacle Point, the thing he'll remember most, the thing that had the greatest impact on his life. And he talks about his time going to the Congo. It's never described as the Congo River, but based on the time period that it is, and based on Joseph Conrad's time in Africa, you could safely assume the location is the Congo River. So he gets given the job. He sets sail down to where it is, and the supposed captain of the steamboat dies. So he ends up taking over, and he becomes the captain of the steamboat. And when he arrives on location, he's immediately taken in by all these Africans just walking in a line, wearing chains around their necks. There's always talk about the darkening of their skin and how they just appear to be just absolutely nothingness. And they're walking past him. They're within 6 inches of his face. And they do not register him at all. They're just walking along, going to their next job. Just the soul has been taken out of them. They cease to exist as a human being, at least to everyone. It's saddening stuff, and it's told in vivid detail. Some of the details in this book are shocking, to say the least, but this was written over 100 years ago, so that's to be expected. So he gets to his steamboat and all that, and not long after he gets to the steamboat, it pretty much just breaks down, and they have to order these parts, and they keep talking about getting rivets from down the river. They need rivets to fix this boat, and they end up stranded there, and he's stranded there for quite some time. And from the beginning of the departure through to where he is at the Congo River, he keeps coming across these people. At first it was an accountant, but then there's other people along the river who keep recounting this man by the name of Kurtz. And Kurtz takes on an absolutely mythological being. He's a fascinating character. He can recite poetry. He's just philosophical. He seems to be one that can just venture out into absolute unknown and map it and come back, not just a changed man, but a more biggened man, just someone that can keep on bringing in knowledge and accumulating intelligence. He reminded me a lot of the judge from Blood Meridian, actually. This bigger than human type being, someone who seems too good to be true, too otherworldly to exist. Apparently the villain from the game Far Cry 2 was based off this character as well, even though I haven't played Far Cry 2. And I admit, even though I've read this, I was sort of taken in by the whole thing. I kept thinking, okay, who is this Kurtz character? Who must he be? Because now as a reader, and be in mind, it's a short book. It's like 100 pages. in this short period of time, they fill you with so much information and vivid details on Kurtz and of the environment and of the Congo River and of slavery. In such a compact way, they express so many things. So in a way, this is one of the most dense things I have ever read in my life. I mean, I thought I'd get through it in a few hours, but 4 hours later, and I was only just about to finish it, and I just realized that I had a blistering headache because there's just so much to take in here. It really is just a really full book, just so much going on. And that's a credit to the book as well, actually. I can see why my younger self wouldn't have liked this as much. I think being a little bit older now, I'm able to articulate things a little bit easier and to be able to think things through far greater than I was at that period in my life, at that reading period in my life. So the book is stretched out into 3 parts, and the first part details him recounting the beginning of his journey, up until the point where the boat breaks down and they need to get parts to fix it. Then the second part is them going upriver and him meeting people who talk about Kurtz and him sort of just taking in Kurtz as being this fascinating figurehead. He himself becomes absolutely fascinated by him. And then the third part, this to me is where the book makes it. This to me is where the book actually turned out to be really good, because I was on the fence about this. But that third part where he actually finally does come to the settlement, the ivory trading station where Kurtz is being held, where it finds out that he's rather ill. This is where it turns into something almost sinister. There is something not quite right going on here, but in a good way. And Kurtz doesn't get much, I guess, page time. He's not in this book a lot. But every time he shows up in that last section, you're waiting for him to do something truly mesmerizing. And it never really happens, but I think that's the idea behind it all, where this person can just give off such great intellect, and it gets passed down and passed across through the land, and it becomes a much bigger thing as it gets passed along. I think that might have something to do with it, but also he is a man of words. He seems to be quite good at articulating thoughts and processes and his ideas. And the natives who surround him, and I think it was something like 2,000 natives in the settlement, who watch him get taken by Marlowe on the boat back up the Congo River. And it's no spoiler to say that he does die, and his final words are the horror, the horror. So if you haven't read this book, then go check it out, because it is worth your time. It's a dense read, and you will feel like you've just read a 500-page book instead of a 100-page book, which this is. But there are so many things happening here that I'm glad I participated in. I think it's an absolutely brilliant piece of novella. It's not my favorite read of the year, but there is something going on in this book. And I'll say that my favorite scene is actually the final section, the final 10 pages or 5 pages, where Marlowe travels back to Europe and meets with Kurt's fiancée. And she asks him what were his final words. And he cannot have the heart to tell her what he thought. You know, Kurt's views on life have changed provocatively since he left Europe, how he views everything as just a complete darkness, basically. And he recounts that Kurt's final words were of the fiancé's name. I think that's quite a beautiful moment. The whole idea of the ivory trade and the whole thing referred to as the company. This company is just referred to as the company. There's this theory going out there that the company itself is the darkness, and Kurtz, being so far away from it, escapes it and becomes his own being. There's too much to talk about, really. I mean, you could do a whole hour-long video on this. I'm just giving off little bits and pieces, but yeah, for 100 pages, you could really go into a lot of detail about it. And for a story within a story, I'm not really into that sort of thing. I've never followed that before, but it was really well put, really well written. There are so many passages here which, I mean, you could tell they were written at a certain time period, but they can translate just as well today. And Joseph Conrad wasn't even a native English speaker, and he's referred to as one of the greatest English writers of all time, up there with Vladimir Nabokov, who was a native Russian, whose books Peenin and Lolita and Ada or Adore, and even such things as Invitation to a Beheading are referred to as amongst the greatest works of English literature. Joseph Conrad will be remembered, yeah, sure. But I think this is one of those problems where this book has been, assigned in universities or maybe even in high schools. And it's the same as Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, or even J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, where just a whole generation of people just dismiss it, and they dismiss it because they had to read it for a college course. But I think if they were to reread it again at a future date, where they don't have the pressure of writing about it, I think they'll be able to get a different interpretation of it and be able to enjoy it a bit more, or at least take in the themes of what's going on in these books and think about them a lot more differently. And it looks at, the whole baseline of civilization and how civilization itself can just crumble, and a whole other host of things. So yeah, I recommend Heart of Darkness. As a reread, it's quite good. It was my second reread in as many weeks, coming up after Don DeLillo's The Silence, but I think this is a far greater book than The Silence. One thing I'll say is that this book actually reminded me of my time in Africa. This is going back many years, but we're on this almost like a safari type thing, and we're on a boat going through and all these trees and everything. And I think it was a trainee person who was driving the boat, and they took us close to this hippo encampment, and this hippo charges us, and he's just trying to get the boat away, and it's through this windy river with all these trees. And for some reason, this book reminded me of that time period. So I thought that was quite a good memory. And even though where I was, which was on the east side of Africa, is so much different than probably the west side of Africa and the Congo, with the Congo being so much more dense, I don't care. It's a good memory, and it reminded me of that. So just to give you an idea of the type of writing you're expecting here, I'm going to read this passage out to you. It's one of my favorites in the whole book. Very good. We penetrated deeper and deeper into the heart of darkness. It was very quiet there. At night, sometimes the roll of drums behind the curtain of trees would run up the river and remain sustained faintly, as if hovering in the air high over our heads, till the first break of day. Whether it meant war, peace, or prayer, we could not tell. The dawns were heralded by the descent of a chill stillness. The woodcutters slept, their fires burned low. The snapping of a twig would make you start. We were wanderers on a prehistoric earth, on an earth that wore the aspect of an unknown planet. That's brilliant writing right there. That's why Joseph Conrad is remembered. So that is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. This has been a very rambling and not to the point review, but I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, like, subscribe, and if you like, have any comments, and comment below. Thanks very much. See you.